On this very special episode of the Tabletop Battlefield, I'm demonstrating how to not run a shop safely by hanging a wire at eye level. Okay, that's not actually what's happening in this episode. Okay, hold on. That is what's happening right here. There's a wire hanging at eye level, but there's a reason for that. What we're actually doing today is continuing on with something I did early last year, sometime last year. We're doing more experimentation with Mod Podge Ultra for coding 3D prints. So welcome everyone. If we haven't met yet, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. And now my previous experiment with Mod Podge Ultra, which is kind of a very watered down spray type of Mod Podge, I did some basic tests to see how well it would work coding a 3D printed piece. Now right here I've got a different 3D printed piece. It's actually a new front to my Fallout 4 laser rifle that I've been working on. More on that in a future episode. But what I want to do here today is test out a different workflow. Because while I found that this Mod Podge Ultra actually works pretty well at coding 3D prints, it's a very time-consuming process because it takes several hours for a given layer to dry. So it's something, even though there's not a lot of human labor involved in it, it does take, a week or so for it to actually properly cure and all that fun stuff until you actually have enough layers that have dried long enough, blah, 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 to get a nice, even coat. More on a finished product a little bit later. So I want to try to figure out if I can speed that process up. Now, this thing may work, it may not work, it may burn down my house, I'm not entirely sure, because in my other hand over here is my heat gun. So what I'm planning to do is put about 20 minutes on the clock and just go between using the Mod Podge Ultra, coating the print, and hitting it with a heat gun for about 20 minutes. Hopefully we don't destroy this thing. And hopefully in the end we got something more or less can work. Honestly at this point I have not tried this yet. So this is going to be a bit of a fun little experiment, but I figure if it fails, hey, I've got a record it didn't work, and maybe you guys either know how to make it better, or you're just not going to waste the time like I did. So with that, let's get 20 minutes on the clock and have some fun with the Mod Podge Ultra. Initially, the thought was I could hang the piece by a thin wire, apply a coat of Mod Podge, and then blast it with a heat gun to dry it all out. Now this did not work. The very thin Mod Podge Ultra would just drip off the piece and fall to the ground. The better option turned out to be to hold the 3D printed piece in your hand, apply the coat of Mod Podge, blast it with the heat gun, and hope you didn't burn your fingers in the process. So let's take a break from the Mod Podge Ultra heat gun fun time-lapse thing. Talk a little bit about this guy right here. Now this is my Minuteman radio prop that I made as part of the Minuteman ammo belt costume. At least I talked about it there. I didn't really do a full build of it. But you can find a link to the video for the ammo belt in the show notes. And this piece here was coated with the Mod Podge process that I showed off in the earlier video. So what I did is for each of the sides, so front, the two sides, top and bottom, I applied about one layer of the Mod Podge Ultra, a very heavy layer, let it dry for an hour or two, come back, apply the next layer, and so on. So this really took about 3 or 4 days of applying the Mod Podge Ultra and letting it dry. So it was the longer process, and it worked pretty well. You can't see too many layer lines. If you look really close to some of the areas, you can see them, but for the most part, the layer lines are hidden. So the Mod Podge Ultra is a pretty good result. Now it does have one little bonus feature, bonus being in quotes depending on what your project is. Let me show you that here on the top of the Minuteman radio. So this little area right up here in the top corner, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but most of the, if not all the layers of the Mod Podge actually got peeled away somehow. And what it left behind was the illusion that it's basically a metal piece that's kind of been corroded through a little bit. So you can kind of imagine if you had a, I don't know, maybe an 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch aluminum or steel plate that is made of the outside of this radio, that it partially got corroded through. I guess it has to be steel because it's all rusty. Aluminum doesn't rust. I should know that. So steel of some sort, and it kind of corroded through. So it's kind of an interesting type of effect if you're going for that post-apocalyptic Fallout type of look. But, of course, if you want to go for the more cleaner, nicer sci-fi type thing going on, this kind of issues and mistakes, quote mistakes, would probably not work very well for you. But this is kind of common with Mod Podge in terms of coding 3D prints. With this discussion out of the way, let's jump back downstairs and finish coating the front of the laser rifle. After applying several layers of the Mod Podge Ultra heat gun blasting process, I then rotate the 3D printed part to another side. And 20 minutes is done. All right, well, let's put that guy down and we can recap a bit. So there's definitely a coating on it. I mean, you can see a lot of gunk up here. And unsurprisingly, the Mod Podge Ultra does perform very similar to Mod Podge when applied in a similar manner where you apply it and then you hit a heat gun and go back and forth. So there's definitely a coating on it. The heat gun did soften up the piece a little bit. It's hardened up back now, but when I was over there holding on to it, it was a little bit soft because, you know, it's PLA. And I guess the biggest issue with Mod Podge when you hit the heat gun, what happens is the top layer forms a film and dries, and then underneath it, either the Mod Podge doesn't fully dry or air gets trapped in there and you get these air bubbles that form, which cause all sorts of interesting distortions on the surface. So I guess to know just how well this actually worked, I got to hit it with some spray primer, in particular filler primer that you normally use in 3D printed parts, and we'll see how it looks. But maybe, just maybe, even if this kind of thing doesn't work great for nice finished parts, it may have that fallout look like you saw with the Minuteman radio, and that could be really good for this post-apocalyptic type cosplay. But all right, let's hit this with some filler primer, follow the instructions on my particular primer, and see how things go. And here we go, the laser rifle front is done. I've got it coated with a couple layers of the primer according to the instructions of that. Let's take a close look at it and see how this process turned out. So when it came to the actual coating, the biggest thing I did differently with this piece as compared to the Minuteman radio is I didn't put as many layers of the Mod Podge on as I was trying to do things fast and see what happened. With the Minuteman radio, I said there's like 8 to 10 layers on any given side. This piece here has like 4 to 5, and it definitely shows. Now the sides are pretty good. There's some hints of layer lines there, but for the most part they're coated. So I think this could work pretty good for any kind of piece that doesn't need super up close appearance. Most cosplay things, that's going to be fine. Now with the top, you can see a lot of the diagonal lines you get with that effect of, you know, the head of the 3D printer going back and forth, filling in things. So I would probably want to, you know, double up the layers and go 10 layers of Mod Podge Ultra with a heat gun if I really wanted to use this method. Other side looks fine, bottom's not too bad. And then we get to the top. Now, the top is where you got some of the bubbling with the Mod Podge. As I briefly mentioned a bit before, what happens with the heat gun on the Mod Podge is it kind of fills over the top. It kind of causes the top layer to dry. But the layers underneath it either have trapped air or something, and they bubble up, and that's how you get this corroded metal look. Now, like with the Minuteman radio, that could be a desired result. And this is where my big decision comes in with in terms of how well does Mod Podge Ultra heat gun or normal works for coating 3D printed parts. And well, if you want to go for that nice Star Trek look, this is probably not the right coating for you. If you need a perfectly smooth finish that looks like it's nice and even coated, no hints of layer lines, no imperfections, look towards something else like XTC 3D by Smooth On. But I really think if you're creating that post-apocalyptic look, you can even see it over here with some of the little issues with the Mod Podge coating, and of course, like I mentioned, the big one here in the top. This effect really looks pretty cool, especially when you paint it with some rust and give it some details in terms of the washes and dirty it up and all that fun stuff, the grinding up, whatever you call it. Weathering, thank you brain, weathering your piece. This type of effect could look really cool for post-apocalyptic cosplay, like Fallout and other similar stories, your zombie apocalypse things like that. So I really think the Mod Podge Ultra, or even normal Mod Podge, the Ultra is just kind of watered down, makes it a little bit easier to apply evenly. I think this method, especially with the heat gun wheel, will easily get some of this bubbling. Like I said, I think this would look really good for a Fallout type prop. So anyway, there's one more experiment done with the Mod Podge Ultra. I do think it's mostly a success. For this piece here, even though you can see some of the layer lines in the front, honestly, that's not going to bother me that much. I'm not really expecting to, get a lot of up-close looks at it if it's not really trying to go for any high-end cosplay competitions and stuff like that. So I'm not super worried about it. But these parts up here, they do look really cool. So I think for the remaining pieces that I'm going to end up printing out for the Fallout laser rifle, because I'm currently in the process of redoing some of that, and I'm going to, like when I built the rifle the first time, I somehow decided I wasn't going to use any 3D printed parts, and it's clear that at least there's some areas in the rifle that would look really good, or at least that I could build a lot easier and a lot more correct to the game with 3D printing versus trying to do pure foam smithing. I'm actually looking at the rifle right now, so I kind of looking down by the camera. The rifle is sitting right by the lower by the camera there. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is for the rest of the 3D printed parts for the laser rifle, I'll use this method just so I get some of that cool wear, rusted, corroded effect. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching. Once again, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. Hopefully this was useful for you. If it was, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Is it still thumbs up on YouTube? I think it is. And whatever else you need to do. Share, blah, blah, blah. You know how the game works. You're on YouTube. You're watching these videos. I don't think I need to say this every time. I wish I believe I don't have to. Oh, goodness. Have a good night. Thanks for watching. See you guys next week.